Good morning. Let's get started. We got. Okay. Good morning. Y'all bow with me, please. Gracious Heavenly Father, for another day we are thankful. We're thankful that you allow us to care about the business of the state of Georgia. Lead us, guide us, direct us in all that we do. Let it be favorable in your eyes. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Let me set some rules on the wall. We got 30 minutes. You be quick. He was in the office while ago. Okay. All right, let's go. Mr. Yates. Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm bringing House Bill 266, LC 352057. This basically goes all the way through and tells this Section 1 the people who are excluded from being denied certain places you can carry your weapon. And this started a few years ago when the Chief Magistrate in Spalding County pointed out that her constables, the people who go into the unsavory parts of town and so forth and serve papers, could not carry their weapon. They could carry it throughout the county, but could not carry it into their office in the courthouse. So I got the law introduced for that, and we passed it, and it worked fine until last year somebody changed the code and took constables back out. So this bill covers all the people who are excluded, and it down at the bottom on line 59 it adds constables employed by a magistrate court of this state. And it's right now it's a dangerous situation really, because the constables still carry the weapons throughout the county. But they have to leave it in the car when they go into the courthouse to their office. So I'd ask that you would vote favorable on that so that we can correct that situation again.
Questions? Excuse me. 266. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Yates.
Thank you.
Mr. Geisinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's deja vu all over again, Mr. Chairman.
That's what I'm afraid.
Inadvertently, the House Resolution 186 was left off the calendar, and the staff has told me that it was a typographical mistake. What I want to add to what I said yesterday is, since yesterday, what we have done is introduce the enabling legislation, which I plan on carrying over into next year, and it is House Bill 467. All this constitutional amendment does is allows the people to vote on pari-mutuel wagering on horses. Mr. Chairman, I ask that you let the people vote. Thank you.
Questions? That's all. Thank you. Mr. Nix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask for 1.5 bills. I'll ask a half again for my House Bill 186 that I asked for earlier this week to help our students be able to get their high school diplomas. This morning, I want to ask for House Bill 274, and this bill contains 3 provisions related to solid waste management. The first provision, it updates our methods for handling yard trimmings by encouraging composting and recycling, plus promoting bioenergy and renewable energy production. It allows lined municipal solid waste landfills which have a permitted gas collection system that captures the gas for beneficial reuse to accept yard trimmings, thus enhancing the production of green, renewable, domestic energy. Only 9 landfills in Georgia qualify. and this effectively bans yard trimmings in all other lined landfills. The second provision in this is a provision requested by EPD for greater oversight of inert landfills. Currently, the inert landfills are permitted by rule, which just means that if you have one, you can send a letter to EPD and say that I've got one. The new rules would have them by July the 1st, 2014. It would actually have to be permitted by EPD. The third provision of my bill is to renew the Solid Waste Trust Fund's $1 tire fee for 3 years. This is a request from the Governor's Office. This would renew it from its expiration date this year, June 30, to expire on June 30th of 2014. And that is my bill. I would certainly appreciate your favorable consideration.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your bill. This bill's background is that it went through the process last year and then it's been back through the process again this year. But I noticed that it's listed in modified open, and that's a code section that is a wide open code section, so I caution our committee. I think it's best we move it to modified structure before we put it on the House floor, or we will be on this bill for about the remainder of the session. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Representative Nix. I noticed that, and as you said, the bill adds a whole new body of regulations and permit requirements for what heretofore have been thought to be pretty harmless inert landfills. Is there an estimate as to how many millions of new dollars it's going to cost Georgia businesses to give EPD this new power over regulation that they?
There is no estimate that's been given. The only thing that's going to be required if they continue to do it now, if they decide they're not going to do it, of course it doesn't matter, is there would be a provision that they would have to have a hazardous gas monitoring system that would have a cost, but the other would just be the cost of the permitting. There's no other, and when I say the cost of the permitting, there's no cost for it, but just whatever it costs them to actually do the paperwork to do it.
Ms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to further address that concern, this is already being regulated by rules and regs, so your inert landfills are already regulated, and there's a cost and a procedure that has to be followed out anyway. But I think the bond and there were three things that were added.
The buffer zones, the gas monitoring, and the financial assurance.
Thank you.
And that financial assurance does not apply to municipalities or governmental bodies.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Nix.
Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Rules Committee, I bring before you today House Bill 62. This is a cleanup bill to the special needs scholarship program that was put in place a couple of years ago. This bill has been worked out by agreement with the Department of Education. They, in fact, gave the bill a thumbs up in committee. The bill sets forth clearer means of notifying parents of students with special needs who have an individualized education program in place. The department put in place a rule that you have to have an IEP in place for a full year prior to qualifying for the scholarship. So what that resulted in was, for a full school year, was that you would have an IEP put in place in year one. You'd have to go through an entire second school year before you could then take advantage of the scholarship in year three. This makes it clear that you would qualify for the scholarship regardless of when the IEP is put in place. So it would do away with that 1 year waiting period. it provides more than one opportunity to apply for the scholarship, and those dates have been worked out with the department. And then finally, existing law provides for quarterly payments but does not spell out when those quarterly payments are to be made or what quarters those payments are supposed to relate to. And so we have worked out some dates here with the department that make some sense in terms of having quarterly periods and a timetable for making quarterly payments. I do want to flag a couple of issues with the bill. One is that I spoke with Mr. Riley about perhaps ratcheting back the language on lines 15 and 16 so that it doesn't require first-class mail, but instead a letter sent home with the student, given the fiscal condition of some of our school systems. And second of all, I believe Chairman Golick has a bill that came out of the Education Committee that places an amendment in the exact same place that this bill places an amendment there on lines 29 and 30. And so one thing that we might also take a look at is marrying up those two pieces of legislation to make them work together.
Are there any questions? Mr. Pro Tem.
I would like to look at this a little bit because I did hear Chairman Golick's, but I do think they're fairly different in their intent and in what they accomplish. And so I'd like to really review those as to whether they ought to be put together or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cook for his first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. I bring for your consideration House Bill 315. It's pretty straightforward. All it does is change the blood alcohol content for the BUI from 0.10, which it currently is, down to 0.08. Every single state that borders the state of Georgia, we share waterways with, and theirs is currently 0.08. It would just bring it in line with that and also bring it in line with and make it consistent with our DUI laws. That's pretty much it. I appreciate your favorable consideration.
Have a question?
Representative Cook, I support your bill. I think it's a good bill. But I have a question. If someone gets caught for a BUI, does that affect their driver's license of a vehicle?
I don't believe it does, Representative Mills. I don't think it, from my understanding, according to DNR, that it doesn't affect the points on somebody's driver's license. No.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mickey? Mr. Chanel, I'm sorry, I didn't know it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question, but I just frankly responding to Representative Mills' question. It does not. What it does do is affects your ability to operate watercraft for a period of time on state waters.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I bring to you House Bill 70, LC 381172. Very brief bill. All it does is give licensed barbers the right to operate a mobile barber shop.
Mr. Bearden.
Just a quick question. If we allow this mobile barbershops, could this put a strain on businesses that are in a set location if this mobile barbershop sets up close to an established business that may be in a building?
Well,
would be an unfair.
Currently, just about every other service in this state is mobile. The guy with the mobile food vendor pulls up by the restaurant and he's got the best ribs. You walk out there and buy his ribs. the capitalistic society will take care of itself. And it just eliminates some barriers to free enterprise.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I come before you for your favorable consideration on House Bill 373, which is it's on the modified structural on the back page, the penultimate bill. This bill is brought at the request of the Department of Juvenile Justice Commissioner Amy Howell, in addition, the juvenile judges of the state of Georgia. Basically, what it does is it awards good behavior for juveniles in the custody of the Department of Juvenile Justice. Currently, the law does not allow the juvenile judges to modify a sentence even if that juvenile has been rehabilitated completely. It's a quirk in the law and the way the statutes are written. This seeks to make it more efficient and also allows the judge and all the interested parties to have an input on whether or not the custodial imposition of a custody sentence, continued custodial sentence, is necessary. Currently, it costs about $230 per day to hold a juvenile in custody, and they've identified around 60 potentially eligible youths. That results in a savings of over $13,800 a day to the state if the fact that their sentences were modified.
Mr. Willard.
Thank you for bringing this, Representative Pack. Isn't it true this brings to the juvenile justice system the same, might say, system we have with the Pardon and Parole Board for adults, in that there's an opportunity once a child has been rehabilitated that the court can look at that rehabilitation and determine if there's a need to go ahead and put the child back in society?
That's correct, Chairman Willard. In addition, there is a stringent notification and requirement that all interested parties have a say-so in whether or not the sentence should be modified, and it requires the judge to make specific findings of rehabilitation on behalf of the youth.
And in fact, there is no other reason to continue holding a juvenile once they have been considered rehabilitated. The purpose is to bring them back to their community and their home.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pack, appreciate this bill. And what this does is it actually gives the judge some discretion. And after he's heard the facts, applied the law, and then also meted out a sentence, he can go and if this child is deemed to be rehabilitated, he can listen to more facts, make a decision on whether his original sentence is in the best interest of that child. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Pack, are you aware that the juvenile code is being rewritten as we speak practically? And did you take that into consideration when you designed this bill so it would fit into the rewrite of the juvenile code, as we're going to be taking that up shortly?
Thank you for that question, Madam Chairwoman. When I drafted it, I initially did not, but I did get testimony during the committee process, that person involved in the redrafting of the juvenile code, and they opined and actually testified that this statute or proposed bill is consistent with exactly what they're trying to do with the overhaul of the system.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Pack.
Thank you.
Members of the committee. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move on Representative Powell's bill, HB 114, that lien foreclosure bill. I'd also like to ask again for House Bill 269, the Department of Driver Services update bill. And finally, HB 309, which is the Scrap Vehicle Modernization Act, which saves the Department of Revenue incredible amounts of money because they have to hand key all these scrap vehicle information into the system now. The department claims it only costs $50,000 to do the programming to make this change. So I would hope that the justification for this is great particularly from a police standpoint, to be able to catch people who are actually scrapping vehicles who don't own the vehicles now.
Mr. Cassis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just asking for, once again, House Bill 175, the Online Clearinghouse Act, which permits school systems to put their courses online.
Mr. Morris.
Chairman, I would like to ask for House Bill 239. That's the banking department bill. It's ready. Thank you.
Ms. Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked for House Bill 226. This is a bill that creates state individual development accounts or matched custodial and savings plans for low-income individuals, particularly with disabilities. And it would expand the able to use these assets to purchase assistive technology, such as rent for their vehicles and computers, anything to help them with their jobs and to remain independent. Ask for your favorable consideration.
Did you mash your button? It's on up here. Okay, now it's on. Now.
No, we got it. Got her stick, share. You just can't mash the button.
Technology.
Would you mind just one more time?
All right. Can you hear me now?
It's still not on.
Hello? Was that it? No.
They fixed the one beside her yesterday.
Can you hear me now? Okay, great. Thank you. Today I bring before you House Bill 226. House Bill 226 creates a state IDA or an individual development account. They're match fund custodial saving plans for low-income individuals. And these savings funds are used for, and this would expand for them to be able to use assets to purchase assistive technology such as wheelchairs or modifications for their homes to help them remain independent. So I ask for your favorable consideration.
Any questions? Mr. Bearden.
I'd just like to put my support by House Bill 315 of Representative Cook and House Bill 114 of Representative Powell.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to move on House Bill 248, the Healthcare Sharing Ministries Freedom to Share Act. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Willard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask also for House Bill 373. This will have a positive fiscal impact on the state by hopefully having a child who has been rehabilitated removed from juvenile justice early. It also provides hope for that child in the sense that if they have to serve at least 1 year, but after that period of time, if it's recognized they have been rehabilitated, they can hopefully have an opportunity to get back in their community. Thank you.
Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to bring attention to the committee of House Bill 301. House Bill 301 would allow for a variance for haulers of poultry waste and bark haulers, plus hot mixed asphalt and construction debris. Three of those things would be 5%, and the poultry waste would be 10%. This day of $3.75 diesel, we need to help these folks all we can. Appreciate the committee's support.
Any questions? Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask, along with Representative Cassis, for HB 175, very non-controversial but very good piece of legislation. It's Good Friday or Monday bill.
That's Tom. He's out. Knock that one off.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm
asking for HB 95, same bill that I discussed yesterday that had to do with the Land Forest Protection Act. And also, that's under structure rule. And I'd also like to put my name beside HB 114. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to offer my support for HB 373 and ask to be put on the calendar, rules calendar.
Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to also offer my strong support for HB 175, Representative Cassis' Online Clearinghouse Act.
Anyone else? Before I set the calendar, y'all, you notice Gerald Green's not here, and you know Miss Cooper's not here. Gerald had a cancer removed yesterday afternoon, and I want you to lift him up. Sharon had a bunch of tests run yesterday, and she's okay, but they made her stay in the hospital overnight. That's the reason she's not here, and lift her up too. The calendar. Monday, again, we're coming in at, session starts at 1. The Rules Committee I'm looking at 11 on Monday. If we can get the room, we will notify you. All right. HB 95 under the structured rule. Do I hear move? Any objection? HB 175 under modified structure. Any objection? HB 239 modified structure. Any objection? HB 249 modified structure. Any objection? HB 266 under modified structure. Any objection? And HB 253 under modified structure. Do I hear a move?
Moving it from open rule to modified
structure. And I moved it from modified open to modified structure. 253. Any objection? That's the calendar.